This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined by Jennifer Carpenter, the President and CEO of AWO, to discuss the significance of AWO's recently released letter to California Governor Gavin Newsom to withdraw the 2022 amendments to the Commercial Harbor Craft Rule. Can you give us a short overview of the 2022 amendments to the Commercial Harbor Craft Rule? Amendments in your letter characterized as draconian and dangerous amendments and their impacts on maritime operators.
Yeah, Greg, and thanks so much for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about this because we have been sounding the alarm bell on this dangerous regulation for several years now. And we are hopeful that even if Governor Newsom is not listening, that the Trump administration is. So let me back up a little bit. California regulators, and I want to emphasize regulators, not the legislature, has chosen to take action that could sever a critical link in the supply chain by imposing on Harborcraft. And when we say to Harborcraft, we're talking, among other things, about those tugboats that assist all of the ocean-going ships that come into and out of California ports carrying vital imports and exports. California regulators are trying to impose on these harbor craft technological requirements to install equipment that does not exist for maritime use, that maritime labor, that vessel owners, that the U.S. Coast Guard have said, whoa, there are serious safety problems here. Mariners' lives could be at risk. Vessels could be at risk of fire. The environment could be at risk. The legislature actually overwhelmingly, on a bipartisan basis, passed a law saying, we get it. We think that these requirements are technologically infeasible and dangerous, and you shouldn't have to do this unless and until they've been certified safe. And the governor chose to veto the requirements. So we're in a pretty serious situation here, to say the least.
I think what struck me even most when I saw your letter the other day when it was sent to me is that CARB withdrew its request to enforce emission rules for the truck and rail industries, but not maritime.
Yeah. So California had a series of regulations that it was seeking EPA approval to enforce. Under the Clean Air Act, California has the ability to basically petition EPA for the ability to impose higher standards under certain circumstances. And EPA was trying to plow through a lot of California requests before the last administration left office. And they were not going to get to trucking, and they were not going to get to rail. And so California, I think, sensing that the Trump administration might well reject its request to enforce the truck and rail requirements, chose to rescind them. EPA had, in the very waning days of the Biden administration, issued a partial approval of the Harborcraft emissions requirements. I think that partial approval, it's worth noting, EPA clearly recognized that there were some problems here. And I think they were trying to split the baby. Unfortunately, the way that they went about that is really not going to provide the relief that vessel owners need. It is not going to provide the certainty that is going to enable us to avoid what we think could be a pretty serious supply chain crisis.
As the state government ratchets up its pressures to comply, what material impacts from it have you seen or do you expect from operators in the region? And how will this in turn impact maritime operations in the state, which, as you know, is a global trading hub?
Absolutely. And, I mentioned the criticality of Harborcraft to the supply chain. So last fall, the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association did a survey of its members, and 85% of them reported that they had experienced shortages in tug availability. This is the Harborcraft shortage that we warned about. What is that resulting in? Delayed vessel departures, increased costs, reduced efficiency, increased customer dissatisfaction. And the reason for all of this is that vessel owners cannot plan, they cannot invest, without achievable regulations with certain timeframes. So I mentioned, that EPA tried to kind of split the baby, partially approve the California request. There is the ability under the California requirements to petition for extensions. Well, here's the problem. That process is extremely time consuming. It is cumbersome. It is very expensive. You are essentially hiring a series of engineering firms to try to prove a negative. I got to prove that there is no possibility that one of these systems exists or will fit on my vessel. And then I've got to wait to see if California agrees with me. And unfortunately, they have a record of not agreeing with engineering evidence in the past. So what is a vessel owner to do? A number of them are saying, I just can't take this chance. I want to operate here, but vessels are mobile assets, and I can't sort of take my chances that the state is going to come to its senses, and so I'm going to need to operate elsewhere. That's a real problem, and as the PMSA survey shows, it's not only tug operators who, we are sort of the intermediaries. We are the facilitators of commerce, but those ship owners who are bringing critical commerce into the state or taking it from the state, facilitating the export of California agricultural products, et cetera, they are not going to be able to get the job done. It's a big problem.
Let's put state politics for the side and policy to the side for a minute and turn our attention to the national front in the first few weeks of the Trump administration. There's been a lot of news, obviously, coming out of Washington, some related to maritime, obviously, some not. But can you discuss the impact for maritime that you expect from President Trump 2.0, and what specifically are AWO's top agenda items for the remainder of 2025?
Yeah. So, I think the Trump administration came into office saying we want to improve border security and we want to do something to reduce the cost of living. The tugboat, towboat, and barge industry, the domestic maritime industry, we are essential to both of those objectives. We are homeland security partners, and we are a critical link in the supply chain. So we look forward to partnering with the administration and with Congress to continue to play that role. How do we do that? There are really three pillars. One, we got to maintain the Jones Act, which is really America's maritime border security law. Two, we've got to make sure that our port and waterway infrastructure is able to efficiently accommodate traffic, respond to weather events, other emergencies, keep commerce moving. And third, to what we were just discussing, we need practical, effective, common sense regulation, that protects people and protects communities and protects the environment without stymieing efficiency, job creation, and innovation. So we look forward to working with the new administration, members of both parties in the 119th Congress to achieve those objectives.